Welcome to the DCTV News at Noon program. I'm Kelsey Kiesling.
And I'm Kendra Cook. The Southwest TV Translator Association underwrites the news show, and Dolores County Broadcasting Network is the producer of DCTV.
If you have a news topic or tips you'd like to see covered, give us a call. The studio number is 677-4119.
Today's show is live on Wednesday at noon and rebroadcast at 3 and 6 p.m. and again re-aired on Saturday at noon, 3 and 6.
Coming up, Canyons of the Ancients monumental status, McPhee River flush, wind farms ruffle feathers, and more.
And also a police shooting, voter privacy with weather and area happenings. Today is May 24th, 2017, and now the news at noon. Reported in the Cortez Journal, Republican Congressman Scott Tipton and Senator Cory Gardner cleared up confusion over where they stand in regards to the protection of Canyons of the Ancients National Monument Tuesday with a letter addressed to Secretary of the Interior Ryan Zink. The letter, which was released to the public, was a response to President Donald Trump's executive order calling for the review of national monuments designated by the last 3 presidents that are more than 100,000 acres in size or deemed to lack adequate public outreach and coordination with relevant stakeholders. Gardner and Tipton expressed their support for Canyons of the Ancients, which was designated by President Bill Clinton in 2000 and encompasses 178,000 acres in both Montezuma and Dolores counties. The congressman wrote, "We believe any review of canyons should conclude that no changes to the designation are necessary." They go on to call the designation of the monument an example of what the Antiquities Act was intended to do, protect cultural treasures while incorporating the historic use of the land into the management of the monuments so that communities support and promote the designation. Gardner and Tipton also point out an issue with the process of designating monuments by administrations, the lack of proper funding for the agencies that oversee them. Existing funding levels are oftentimes not adequate to support the increase in tourism a designation may bring with it. Existing infrastructure that is incapable of accommodating the increased tourism and land management agencies' resources being diverted from traditional roles like permitting of oil and gas or grazing leases to other functions necessary to maintain the monument. A similar letter was issued by Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat of Colorado, and Governor John Hickenlooper on Monday. But it also asked Zink to support the designation of Bears Ears National Monument in Utah, even though that is not within their jurisdiction. Tipton addressed only the Colorado monument because he, quote, believes that land designations should be driven at the local level. Therefore, the letter did not include any monuments that may be under review outside of the state. Canyons of the Ancients is known for being inhabited by ancestral Puebloans for 10,000 years with more than 6,000 recorded archaeological sites in its boundaries. Complete copies of the letter to Secretary Zink can be found on Congressman Tipton and Senator Gardner's websites.
Reported by the Cortez Journal, no one knows why, but when he heard the sudden blare of sirens behind him, Daniel Covarrubias began running. The 37-year-old was walking home from the St. Clair Hospital in Lakewood, Washington, on April 21, 2015, after getting treatment for side effects from his pain medication. His backpack full of beadwork, a craft that he had started a few years ago in an attempt to reconnect with his native heritage, Covarrubias dashed into a nearby lumberyard, scaled a 25-foot-tall stack of wood, and crouched, trying to hide. The police showed up, and Covarrubias reached into his pockets. They yelled for him to show his hands. He raised a dark object toward them as if he were pointing a gun. The 2 policemen opened fire, 9 shots, one of which hit Covarrubias in the head, killing him. When the officers climbed up on top of the wood stack, they discovered that the object Covarrubias had pointed at was a cell phone. His death adds to a troubling statistic in the West. As in the rest of the nation, Native Americans are the racial group most likely to be killed by law enforcement, at a rate 3 times higher than whites. In 2016, an estimated 21 Native Americans fell victim to police violence, according to the Counted, a database that tracks people killed by U.S. law enforcement personnel. The previous year, 13 died. The deaths have ignited the same outrage that erupted in recent years following the shooting deaths of numerous African Americans by law enforcement. Following the Black Lives Matter model, a Native Lives Matter movement has spread, calling attention to what Chase Iron Eyes, a Lakota attorney and activist, calls America's undeclared race war. For police, Covarrubias Covarrubias's death was a rare tragedy, a product of the split-second decision-making that law enforcement officers must make to protect others and themselves.
Reported in the Cortez Journal, the whitewater boating season on the lower Dolores River below McPhee Dam is ending, but it may be briefly revived a little later. By midnight, May 23rd, flows ramped down to 600 cubic feet per second. They will hold for 24 hours, then drop to 400 CFS after midnight on May 24th. From there, the river will drop to 200 CFS, then 75, and by this Sunday, May 28th. Spring runoff forecasts have steadily dropped with the drier than normal weather, said Ken Curtis, an engineer with the Dolores Water Conservancy District. It is time to fill the reservoir. Curtis said there is a chance that early hot June weather could bring down the remaining snowpack very quickly, which could force a mini whitewater spill of boatable flows for 4 to 6 days in June. A solid winter snowpack allowed for the reservoir to fill for farmers and provide for 52 days of whitewater boating below the dam. In mid-May, 4,000 CFS of flushing flows were released for 72 hours to benefit river ecology, including sediment clearing and channel scouring, which improves native fish habitat. There were 7 days of optimal flow releases of around 2,000 CFS. A year-in-review meeting is being planned by reservoir managers, boaters, and environmental groups to evaluate the season. A plan by Colorado Parks and Wildlife to flush out smallmouth bass opens up a slight window for kayakable flows later in the summer. In mid-July, biologists want to use part of their reserved fish pool in McPhee Reservoir to release 400 CFS for 3 to 4 days and disrupt the bass spawn. The bass are a threat to the flannelmouth and bluehead suckers and roundtail chub, preying on their young and competing for food sources.
Reported by the Durango Herald, a pair of organizations which represent independent voters that sought a veto of a bill designated to codify Propositions 107 and 108, which were approved by voters in November, say they're looking at other ways to overturn the legislation. The propositions allow for unaffiliated voters to cast ballots in primaries for presidential candidates and state elected officials, respectively. To enact the propositions, Senate Bill 305 was passed by the legislature and signed into law last week by Governor John Hickenlooper. The Coalition of Independent Voters in Colorado, Civic and Independent Voting, a national association of independent voters, opposed SB 305, saying it went against the will of voters by requiring public disclosure of which primary an unaffiliated voter casts a ballot. Gwen Ballard, founder of Civic and resident of Carbondale, said the disclosure could be used by the parties to track and target individuals for political recruitment. We don't want to affiliate, and this kind of forces at least a de facto affiliation, Ballard says. Now that the bill has been signed by the governor, Ballard said her organization is looking into what recourse is open to it to protect privacy of independent voters. One option is a referred petition that would take the implementation of SB 305 to a vote of the people, but that might be out of reach, Ballard said. We'd have to get something in excess of 90,000 signatures here in the next 2 months. Ballard said civic and independent voting are reaching out to privacy advocates to explore what other options are open. Ballard added that if a petition did make the ballot, she believed Coloradans would reverse the actions of the legislature.
Reported on in thehill.com, in Colorado alone, there are 23 industrial wind farms that are operational, with over 1,800 turbines in over 10 counties. Wind energy has gone from supplying 1% of Colorado's total energy output in 2005 to 14% in 2014. Yet, with the explosion in wind generation, there is a dearth of studies regarding the long-term health impact of industrial wind in Colorado, and there doesn't seem to be much interest in cataloging those impacts anytime soon. The World Health Organization recognized in a 2009 study that 40 to 55 decibels during sleep cycles can cause adverse health effects, and that children, the chronically ill, and the elderly are more severely affected. The study also found that persistent sound levels above 55 decibels at night can cause an increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease. According to Renewable Northwest, a renewable energy nonprofit organization, the average wind turbine operates at around 50 decibels. However, a 2003 study indicates that during nighttime hours, the sound produced from wind turbines could be 18 decibels higher than the predicted daytime levels due to the lack of ambient background noise. This translates to the average wind turbine being 13 decibels higher than the amount that causes adverse health effects. The study was conducted of wind turbines that were 300 feet and found that the problem would be even worse for wind turbines taller than this. The average height of U.S. commercial wind turbines is 328 feet, which exceeds the 300-foot threshold, as do the wind turbines in the Golden West Industrial Wind Project just east of Colorado Springs. Turbines at the proposed Rush Creek Wind Project in eastern Colorado could be even taller. Researchers found that wind turbines also produce infrasound, frequencies under 20 hertz. Long-term exposure to infrasound can also cause sleep disturbance and other issues of wellness. The International Organization for Standardization, or ISO, an independent non-governmental organization and the world's largest developer and publisher of international standards, says vibrations between 1 Hz and 0.1 Hz can cause motion sickness. These are the same frequency levels produced by the Golden West Wind Farm, according to a field study conducted by an independent acoustic consultant. These are also the same symptoms experienced by some of the residents that live nearby. We won't know if there are tangible long-term health hazards until there is more thorough study of the health impacts of wind turbines and where they are sited, with the state's largest electricity provider, Xcel Energy, also being the nation's leading provider of industrial wind. Everyone would be well served if Colorado led the way on the study of health impacts of commercial-scale wind projects.
Reported by the Cortez Journal, signs were installed Monday along Colorado Highway 3 to honor Marine Captain Jeff Kuss, a Durango native who died in a jet crash while practicing with the U.S. Navy Blue Angels. The highway in South Durango will carry the honorary designation of Captain Jeff Kuss Memorial Highway. Kuss, age 32, crashed the FA-18C Hornet he was piloting crashed June 2nd, 2016, as the Blue Angels prepared to perform in the Great Tennessee Air Show in Smyrna, Tennessee. He was a graduate of Durango High School and Fort Lewis College. In March, the state legislature unanimously adopted House Joint Resolution 1015 to name the highway for Kuss. The highway, just over 2 miles long, will continue to also carry the State Highway 3 name. The resolution was brought forward by Representative Barbara McLaughlin, Democrat of Durango, and co-sponsored by all members of both chambers. The town of Smyrna also is planning to honor Kuss with a $1 million memorial that will include a retired Blue Angel FA-18 Hornet on permanent loan from Pensacola's National Naval Aviation Museum, according to the town website. Smyrna Mayor Mary Esther Reed says on a video about the memorial that after the crash, the town began to talk about what it should do to honor Kuss. Fundraising is underway for the memorial in Smyrna Park. And now, here's our weather report.
Today's high is still expected to reach 79. Some southeast Utah areas will reach into the lower 90s today. Wind speeds will run 5 to 15 miles per hour with gusts as high as 30. Winds will pick up in the evening hours from that, running 10 to 20 with the arrival of a cold front. The higher winds are due to the front we were expecting for tomorrow is earlier and stronger than originally estimated. Most activity is expected to the north of I-70, but we have not been left out. So the National Weather Service has the latest estimated time of arrival as tonight and have added a 30% chance of rain after midnight. Tomorrow morning, chances will be at 40%. Sometime earlier in the day, Thursday, a break in the clouds and activity is expected. Then later, the last gasp of that system will give a 20% chance of showers. Also beginning at noon Thursday and going through 7 p.m., there is a red flag warning. Yes, it is in spite of any chance of rain, as fuels are dry and those wind speeds are not good. It is too early to tell exactly what will happen, but next week's weather is advertising a strong west coast ridge sliding into the Rockies. The current thinking is that it will undercut the high and push some moisture into the Four Corners region by the middle of the week. The Pacific Northwest will see rain develop by tomorrow evening. Areas of rain and higher elevation snow will develop over part of the northern Rockies by this evening. A low over the middle Mississippi Valley hitting the Tennessee Valley this evening will creep eastward and reach to the Ohio Valley and the central Appalachians by Thursday evening. Most of these showers and thunderstorms will move off the mid-Atlantic coast and the southeast coast by Thursday evening, although some will linger over parts of the mid-Atlantic into tomorrow evening. The front over the northern high plains and parts of the Great Basin will move eastward to the northern and central plains and into the central Rockies by tomorrow evening. As you might expect, since today is the high for the week, the first 2 days of the 5 start at 76, then drop 3 to 4 degrees per day till Saturday and bottom out at 69. They will then climb at a rate of 2 degrees today or per day up to Monday's predicted 73 degrees. The remainders of this week, breezy and some rain, then a clearing until sometime midweek next week. Enjoy your holiday weekend and the beginning of your summer as much as possible, and then tell us about it. Now back to the news.
According to the Durango Herald, the ink is officially drying on the first success for construction defects litigation reform in Colorado, House Bill 1279. The bill represents a highlight of bipartisan efforts in the 2017 legislative session, and it was signed into law by Governor John Hickenlooper Tuesday in front of a crowd of lawmakers and stakeholders. HB 1279 has been lauded by legislators and private organizations as a vital step toward thawing the condominium market by requiring a majority vote of unit owners rather than a simple majority by a homeowners association, and setting a limit of 90 days for vote to be held. The home seekers out there and builders, job creators needed to see some progress in this area, and this has created some momentum, said Mike Kopp, CEO of Colorado Concern. Colorado Concern, a coalition of chief executives from across Colorado, worked closely with lawmakers in the drafting of HB 1279 and said it is a watershed effort for the affordable housing market. Despite the success, there might be need of more reform. For example, some form of binding mediation or arbitration to avoid lawsuits might be the next steps, Kopp said. The addition of arbitration has been criticized by homeowners advocacy groups such as Build Our Homes Right as a way of stripping away owners' rights to a trial. A bill that contains such provisions, Senate Bill 156, was killed during the session. While HB 1279 does not include arbitration, it requires developers be given a chance to address owners and offer to remedy faulty construction before a lawsuit is pursued. Senator Jack Tate, Republican of Centennial and sponsor of HB 1279, said there is a need to address other facets of the litigation by the bipartisan group of lawmakers that worked on defects this session. But time is needed to see how the market acts in response to the new law, which Kopp said could take 12 to 18 months.
You've heard that the Great Barrier Reef of Australia is suffering coral bleaching due to warming waters. Some may be aware that that reef is not alone in that suffering. The Washington Post, in an article by Chelsea Harvey, May 16th, has reported another area of reef endangerment. The Chagos Archipelago is an area made up of 60 islands in the Indian Ocean. Diego Garcia is among them. Diego Garcia has been a resource base location for the U.S. Navy since World War II. Located east-northeast of Madagascar and Mauritius and about halfway between the coast of Somalia and the west end of Indonesia and just south of the Maldives, a major part of the archipelago's scientific significance is the fact that most of the islands are nearly untouched by human influence. That makes the site something of a reference point for researchers, where ongoing effects and processes like climate change might be observed without all the extra scientific noises that come from human activities like fishing or construction. John Turner, a professor at Bangor University in Wales who led the recent expedition, says in shallow water above 15 meters and in places down to 20 meters, they've seen a lot of coral mortality, probably somewhere in the region of 90%. It's a very upsetting thing to see, he says, when these reefs had developed so well and to see them being essentially reset. The reef is believed to have suffered back-to-back bleaching events in 2015 and 2016, brought on by unusually warm conditions and likely influenced by climate change and an unusually severe El Nino effect in 2015. Scientists have found that coral reefs all over the world have been affected by these conditions. Not all have fared as badly as those in the Chagos area or the Great Barrier Reef. Bleaching doesn't automatically mean death for coral reefs. It's a natural reaction to environmental stresses, such as high temperatures that cause the corals to expel the tiny algae that live inside them and give them their brilliant colors. Maybe you will remember a piece from about 2 weeks back that algae play a critical part in methane and CO2 processing in ocean waters. Given enough time and right conditions, coral may regrow its algae and return to normal, but bleaching events can weaken the reefs, making them more vulnerable to disease. And if stressful conditions last long enough, the coral may begin to die. An El Nino effect in 1997 and 98 caused a severe hit, and it took until about 2012 before the Chagos Reef appeared to have recovered. Now Turner says the Chagos area has suffered so much coral death that the reefs have basically been set back to that level. This raises alarm about the archipelago's future, especially amid concerns of rising global sea levels. If the reefs begin to die off in any way or erode, then of course these atolls are at risk. Erosion will begin to exceed growth, and you'll see these islands begin to recede. That's the natural way with atolls.
Reported by the Cortez Journal, the Montezuma Water Company is working with the town of Dolores to create an encroachment permit for the company's building at 209 Central Avenue. The building is partly within the town's 3rd Street right-of-way. The water company recently moved out of the building to a new location off Colorado Highway 145. They had a contract to sell their old Dolores building, but the buyer backed out after discovering it was partly on town property and a permit was required. To accommodate properties that jut out past the property line, the town issues encroachment permits. The permits allow the structure to remain, are automatically renewed year to year, and transferred to new owners if the property sells. But if the building burns down or is scrapped for a new one, the actual property line must be adhered to. The San Juan National Forest will be releasing a proposal to expand the non-motorized Boggy Draw Trail system this summer by 25 miles. The forest is reviewing a proposal submitted by the Southwest Colorado Cycling Association to build additional trails in the Bean Canyon area and north of the Boggy and Italian Canyon trails. A scoping plan is being prepared for release this July, which will include details and give the public an opportunity to comment.
Medical marijuana, can it help combat the opioid addiction epidemic? This was reported by the Colorado Statement. National legalization of medical marijuana could not only save lives, it could save $1 billion of taxpayers' money annually as a result of the drop in Medicaid prescription rates, according to a new study published in Health Affairs. The researchers found that in 9 states where medical marijuana was legal, Medicaid prescriptions for painkillers, antidepressants, and anti-anxiety medications dropped significantly. In fact, anti-nausea drug prescriptions fell by 17%, antidepressant prescriptions fell 13%, and prescriptions for seizure and psychosis drugs fell 12%. The U.S. is facing an opioid epidemic. We've seen it affect our local community, which is why there's a crashed truck with the sign reading opioid parked right on Main Street in Dove Creek as a wake-up call to the extent of the crisis. Researchers have found that in those legal medical marijuana states, prescriptions for painkillers fell by 11%. This is consistent with other studies that have found opioid overdose rates were reduced in states with medical marijuana laws. Authors Ashley Bradford and W. David Bradford of the University of Georgia estimate that if all states would have had medical marijuana laws in place in 2014, the total savings for Medicaid could have been as much as $1.01 billion. In Colorado alone, the researchers estimated the Medicaid savings would save the state more than $14 million a year. Researchers have identified how medical marijuana can treat physical pain. THC, the main psychoactive ingredient in the marijuana, can connect with neuron receptors that mediate pain and then block those receptors from sending or receiving pain signals. Dr. Daniel Clow, who is an anesthesiology professor at the University of Michigan and the director of the Chronic Pain and Fatigue Research Center, said marijuana has some anti-inflammatory properties that might be useful for certain types of pain. This helps some patients treat various conditions with marijuana medicines rather than opioids, which are highly addictive. I agree with this approach because marijuana is at least as effective for most types of chronic pain as opioids, said Clow. There is also no question they are safer, as 35,000 people in the U.S. die of opioid overdose every year and none from marijuana. Many studies conducted by Clow and the CPFRC suggest that medical marijuana can potentially help relieve the national opioid crisis.
Reported by the Durango Herald, the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic will host a new event this year that will officially clock some cyclists' race against the Durango and Silverton narrow gauge railroad train. The Tailwind Nutrition Beat the Train challenge will kick off this year as a part of the McDonald's Citizens Tour to Silverton, which begins at 8 a.m. Saturday. The Iron Horse race was conceived after two brothers decided to race each other in 1971. Jim Mayer, who worked on the train, was challenged by his brother, Tom, an avid cyclist, on a race to Silverton. The duel inspired the creation of a bike race the next year, and the race against the train has been a focus for the event ever since. IHBC race director Gage Sippy said, "Beating the train is part of the Citizens Tour appeal, but there has not been any formal recognition for those who do so. Cyclists who have entered the race have had to compete against the train on their own and without any pacing guidance, and many of them don't even know how long it takes for the train to get to Silverton," Sippy said. Tom Mayer will be among the 150 participants of the challenge who will be corralled in the front of the 1,840 cyclists participating in the Citizens Race. Mayer will ride on the same bike he rode when he raced his brother in 1971. The group will be led by a group of 5 pacers who will focus on helping the cyclists beat the train by maintaining a carefully calculated pace. Each aid station will have a clock to provide cyclists not only their own time, but the train's time as well. The train takes 3 hours and 30 minutes to reach Silverton, and the pacers will be on course to arrive at 3 hours and 25 minutes. Bayfield-based Tailwind Nutrition sponsored and helped organize the event. The IHBC and the Tailwind have sent the participants packets of information, including fueling tips, altitude guides, peloton riding tips, and racing and pacing tips in general. The participants who beat the train will take a group photo together, which will be hung inside the train station. The plan is to continue this tradition with a new poster next year.
More High Canyon country happenings. This Friday, May 26, from 8 to 11 p.m., Wake Up Laughing will be performing at the Dolores River Brewery, 100 South 4th Street in Dolores. They'll be rocking out with special guests, Trombone Nasty. Wake Up Laughing is a dynamic 3-piece band out of Southwest Colorado. They bring an eclectic mix of originals with mindful lyrics and old school covers with their own funky twists and turns. Cover charge is $5. The lower Dolores River flow may be slowing down, but the Dolores River Festival is fast approaching. Make sure to mark down June 10, 2017 at Joe Rowell Park in Dolores, Colorado. All the festivities and the music starts at 10 a.m. and runs till 12:30 a.m. They say to celebrate the river while receiving education about this important resource, enjoy live music, and browse the many food, drink, and goods vendors. This is a family-friendly event, and games and activities are provided for kids. Come ride the Dolores River and enjoy the music, beer, and food. Camping is available, and it is a dog-friendly event. Today, Wednesday, May 24th, through Sunday, May 28th, there will be a petting zoo at the Cortez Elks Lodge, 2100 North Dolores Road. It runs from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. $2 admission to see over 20 species, including kangaroo, zebra, camel, and baby goats. $1 to $5 to feed the animals, and $15 for a camel ride. The restaurant will be open if you want to grab a bite and check out their new menu. For more details, call 565-3557. All of the happenings are posted on our DCTV News at Noon Facebook page, along with the YouTube replays, weather, and original stories and local posts. To share your event or information, contact us. Emails dcbnnews@gmail.com or call us at the station 677-4119, and we'll be sure to get your news on air.
Thanks for tuning in. The News at Noon airs live at noon Monday through Wednesday, then rebroadcast at 3 and 6 p.m., and again re-aired Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in the same order at noon, 3, and 6.
And be sure to check out DCTV News at Noon on Facebook. Please like us there and share it with a friend.
For Kendra Cook, Jerry Tope, and everyone at DCTV with the News at Noon program out of Dove Creek, USA, I'm Kelsey Kiesling. Thanks for watching.